Pipe Network presents.
On this episode of season 4, let's talk.
Well, August 12th, a couple weeks later, it was the day before I was supposed to start my new job at the university I'm at. And I went upstairs to take a nap, and he stayed downstairs holding my daughter, who was 4. And as I'm getting ready to get in the bed for a nap, I hear glass shatter downstairs. And I called out, what broke? What broke? Because as a mom, my first thought was what broke. And no one answered me. And so I kept saying, buddy, what broke? What broke? And then finally, after he didn't answer, I knew something was wrong.
On behalf of my guest here in the Rajiv Show, we would like to wish you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Hey folks, welcome back to the Rajiv Show, and I'm your host Rajiv Doreswamy, and this show aims to help reach out to those who are currently struggling in life and to remind you that life is indeed beautiful when you're inspired to make it your own. All right, folks, we're gonna go international again, and this time my guest today is an author. Uh, 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 Strange enough, she's a teacher, a college teacher, a doctorate, PhD in criminology, an author, and a super mom, and an entrepreneur. Funny, all those words in combined goes to show that my guest is an intense, very powerful, and I love her vibe. Dr. Ashley Wellman. Hi, Ashley. How are you doing? Can I call you Ash? Mom
Yes,
Ash.
please. Please. Hi, Rajiv. I'm so glad to be with you.
How are things how are things, in the end?
Things are going good. I'm home with my little one here in the United States. We're still battling COVID-19. And so we are just taking it easy at home. And I'm getting ready for classes to start in a couple weeks.
Awesome. Let's get into saying, could you give my listeners a little bit of background about yourself?
Of course. So I am, like Rajiv said, I'm a college professor, and that journey's been really interesting because I grew up in love with true crime. My dad and I would watch Unsolved Mysteries and all these other shows where I got a little sneak peek of kind of the macabre things in life. And it really motivated me to want to be in criminal justice. And when I got to college, I was told, if you do that route, you're going to be a police officer. And in hindsight, a police officer would have been a fine job to have, but I didn't really know that that's what I wanted to do. So I switched gears in college. Often we're told like, oh, your dream doesn't work, follow this route. And so I actually studied public relations and would become a kind of an event planner and special events coordinator for a big bookstore here, which comes full circle long term. But as I was doing that job, my heart kept saying, criminal justice is really your calling. That's really where I wanted to be. And so that's what motivated me to go back to graduate school here to get my master's and my PhD in criminology. And in that, I found a love of working with the survivors of violent crime. And so I have spent the last 12, 13 years working with families impacted by homicide. So they have somebody who was murdered in their family and or someone who has survived sexual assault. And for me, it was something that, my education had given me a platform to give other people a voice. And so academically, I used my platform to help share their stories. And that's where I am today. But now, like you said, in 2014, I got to add mom to the list of accomplishments. My daughter, Reagan, is 6 now. By far my greatest asset and achievement in life is being her mother. And I'm also now officially an author, and we'll talk more about that later, but it's kind of come full circle.
Awesome. Uh, my first question that I normally ask my interview is, who were you in high school? If you and I were classmates, are you the person who's into books? Are you athletic type? Are you introverted? Are you in the corner of the classroom,
Oh no.
ambiverted, and all that stuff?
Yeah, I'm definitely not in the corner of the classroom. Anyone who went to high school with me would tell you that I was going to be friends with anybody. I was the one who, if someone didn't have somebody to eat lunch with, I was over there eating lunch with them. But I was also a huge nerd. I'm very
Ooh,
proud of that now, but I was a huge nerd. I loved school, and I still love to learn. It's something that really, is important in my life, is to never stop growing and learning. So I was very academic. I was a swimmer, and I
ooh,
was the mascot. So I was the dolphin in high school, that at football games and all, I was in the costume dancing. It was my greatest role in high school, was being the dolphin mascot. And in my senior year, I ended up going to the local university and actually didn't go to high school my senior year. I took college classes so that I could get ahead in college. That goes towards the nerd portion. But I was really into theater and really outgoing, and it was, you know, high school. I don't know how it is where you were. High school was not the greatest time. That's a struggle. It's a battle. But
mostly, yeah.
yeah, I still have some of the most dear friends from high school are still some of my loyal friends today. And yeah, they'd all tell you, huge nerd. I was a class clown, um, really into entertaining people, and still somehow managed to keep my nose in a book and do really well academically.
Wow, that's interesting. That's like an all-rounder, like a kind of dream girl for a normal guy. Yeah.
Listen, I was a huge nerd at the time. I got better with age. I'm like wine. I got a lot better with age back in high school. I was just a nerd that was funny.
But you would have been an interesting classmate for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Connecting this to the next question is, you mentioned earlier your dad and criminology, and your motivation to saying, who is your greatest motivator? Is it possibly a TV show thing at the time, or who's your greatest motivator? Or let me just add in, what is your greatest motivator and why?
I think my greatest motivator has changed significantly depending on what stage
Mm,
of my life I'm in. Right now, my greatest motivation is to seek health and happiness for myself and for my daughter. And to kind of redefine what success means to me. So it's been a very I had to look into myself a lot recently to say, what is the goal of life, and has that changed for me, and how do I achieve that goal and let go of some of the things that other people have told me. So I think my greatest motivation right now is this quest to trust myself and to allow myself to break the rules and to really think about what is it that my life needs. And sometimes that means going against the grain and breaking the rules and kind of being a rebel in your career or in your life. But at the end of the day, I'm in charge of taking care of a little human who's been through a heck of a lot. And for me, it's saying, okay, then I'm going to be motivated to seek health and happiness, because above all, if I don't have that, then I'm not able to be the mom and the friend and the daughter and the sister and things like that I need to be.
wow, that's really powerful stuff. Uh, connecting connecting the next question to the previous question is, now that you are, uh I think you've reached the highest form of level in terms of education, PhD. I do not know much what goes above PhD. What made you who you are at that level? I mean, that's a prestigious level for some.
Yeah, thank you. I guess that my only other option would be to get a second PhD, so we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. How did I get to that level? I think it was really just a determination to say, for me, my whole life I've said I want a family, and family was the goal for me, and work became a way to provide for my family. And so academia really has provided a chance to have flexibility. And as a teacher here in the United States, as a professor, I have summers off and longer holidays. I get to leave work, right as my daughter's getting out of school. So I think that was one of the things that really drew me to this career, because I had an option to go federal law enforcement.
Hmm.
And I remember talking to my husband, and saying, hey, what should I be doing? And he said, it depends on the goal. If you want money as your goal, go federal law enforcement. If you want time with your family and being able to spend what money we have, with us, then I would go the education route. And I had fallen in love with research. And that's such a heavy part of your PhD program is the research that you do. And so I just felt called to share the stories of my survivors that were willing to talk to me. And so at that point, it was kind of like, look, if I've been put in this position to share that and to raise awareness about homicide, to raise awareness about sexual assault, then that's kind of what I wanted to do. So here I am.
Interesting stuff. You are really motivated. You are indeed a super mom with the stuff,
Thank
with the
you.
choices. I mean, I could visualize the choices that you could actually that you would have taken if saying. Speaking of choices, let's connect past to present. If today was yesterday, what would you keep and let go of? And if let me rephrase that in a more simplified way, is that if you were to take a time machine and you were to take things from your past and take things from your past, what were those things that you would take, and probably what are those that you would let go of?
I think I would keep um, I would keep the my vision the same, my focus the same, because for me, my life has not gone the way I thought it was going to go, but I have always kept my family and, helping others kind of at the forefront of what I do. So I wouldn't lose that, even though sometimes that gets complicated, or I do sacrifice other things for that pursuit. But what I would definitely change, and I wish I could still change it, is being kinder and more gentle to myself. Like just yesterday, I had lost something that had been emailed to me, and it was really important. And all I did was keep beating myself up about, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm so stupid. I can't believe I didn't print that. I can't believe I didn't share that with someone else so that I would have a record of it. And I spent a good 2 hours nearly making myself sick with worry and frustration with myself. And at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? That's such a minor accident. And we all make mistakes. And in time, that's not going to be that important. Like right now, it seems important, but in 5 years, I'm not going to think about that. So I think having grace with myself is probably what I will tell you every morning when I wake up. I wish I'd had more grace with myself the day before.
That's cool. I like that. I like that response. That's the best response that I've ever gotten.
It's very
um,
true. It's a very true response.
I'm feeling it. I'm feeling the vibe. Uh, now let's go from present to the future. This is a futuristic question. Is what are your thoughts for the future?
My thoughts for the future. I want to build a life worth living and not have it be focused on what we're told is so important. So for so long I've lived a life to make sure there's, my paycheck reflects enough to provide for my family, which is very important, but it's been kind of that's been the focus, and I've defined myself by my career. And when hiccups have come, like I just had a severe career setback, when those kinds of things happen, it's as if you lose your worth and value, because that's the only way I've been defining myself. And instead, I want to have a life of adventure and memories, because when I die, nothing's coming with me, but to create memories and to travel and to experience different cultures, those kinds of things are really important to me. And I think as a mother are really important to share alongside my daughter. So I'm hoping that the future, and maybe, with our book, has the potential to take us on some wacky, wild adventures to see things we never really thought we were going to get to see.
Awesome. Uh, and this next question is more like a segmented question. Is what inspires you? You just let me know when you're ready to go.
All right, I'm ready. You ready for me to tell you?
Sure.
Okay. What inspires me in my life is my daughter. And it takes a little bit to unpack why that inspiration is so deep. I'm at the point in my life where I'm inspired to create a magical, worthy, enjoyable life for her and for myself. And I have to take you back to 2018 to tell you why that has become my greatest inspiration, my greatest dream in my life. In 2018, my daughter was 4, I was 34, and my husband was 44. His name was Buddy. And we had just moved from Missouri to Texas. And we had done so because I had suffered 4 miscarriages after Reagan. So I had lost 4 babies as we were trying for our second child. And I was unhappy at work. And so my husband said, Ashley, life is about being happy. So if you're not happy here, one of the things, our house, we had built a nursery and we had different things ready for this second child. And so that home for me even felt kind of uncomfortable at that point because I didn't have the baby to bring home to the house. And so he said, if you're not happy, then we should move and we should write a new kind of chapter for ourselves. So we moved to Texas in June of 2018, and he had to stay behind and finish up work for us. So he met us at the end of July of 2018. Well, August 12th, a couple weeks later, it was the day before I was supposed to start my new job at the university I'm at. And I went upstairs to take a nap, and he stayed downstairs holding my daughter, who was 4. And as I'm getting ready to get in the bed for a nap, I hear glass shatter downstairs. And I called out, what broke? What broke? Because as a mom, my first thought was what broke? And no one answered me. And so I kept saying, Buddy, what broke? What broke? And then finally, after he didn't answer, I knew something was wrong. So I ran downstairs and I found him lying in the hallway having a seizure, and he was gasping for air. He couldn't breathe. He had actually broken a picture hanging on the wall. As he fell down, he had grabbed a picture and pulled the picture down. And my daughter at 4 years old wanders around and watches her dad, having a seizure is what I thought was happening. And I call 911, which is our emergency response line here in the States. And they send an ambulance and a fire truck and some police officers to help us. And I kept asking them, is he okay? Is he okay? And they said, yeah, he's okay because he has a heartbeat. And so I thought, okay, well, this is, it's going to be okay. And so in my head, the only thing I was thinking about is what am I going to say to Buddy when he wakes up? Because there were going to be some curse words involved. And I was going to tell him, don't you ever do that to us again. It scared us so bad. And then another ambulance comes up and another fire truck comes up. And I knew something was really, really, really wrong. I kept asking him, does he have a heartbeat? Does he have a heartbeat? And they said, no, he doesn't, which means he had passed away. And they said, but we're going to try to resuscitate him and get him back. So I followed them to the emergency room, and they worked for 60 minutes to try to save his life. And got him back 4 times. I watched them do CPR on him for about an hour. And then the doctor looked at me and she said, if I get him back, he's going to be brain dead. And you have to realize that, if he doesn't want to live like that, then you need to stop. And I am thankful that we had a conversation about him saying, please don't ever let me be on a ventilator or, not in my full self or paralyzed or those kinds of things. And so I told her to stop. And in that moment, my whole life got ripped out from underneath of me. I had walked into that emergency room like they're going to save him. I'm in the place where they're going to save him. And instead, I'm literally, the only thing I had to do was kiss him goodbye and leave. They don't do anything for you. It's just like, I'm so sorry for your loss. Have a good day is pretty much what it is. And so I'm in there, and my first thought is, how am I going to tell my daughter that her dad is dead? And she's only 4. And what the hard part was that he was our world. I used to not really view myself as like this really strong super mom. I used to think and tease them that if I disappeared or I went on vacation, for 8 years, no one would really miss me because he was so engaged with her and so funny and so lighthearted and fun. And I was the one who was very serious and kind of very disciplined and those kinds of things. So I kissed him goodbye at the hospital, and I told him, I promise you I'm going to create a life for your daughter that's worth living and that's magical and that is worthy of something you would have given us. And I think in that moment, making that promise, I had no idea how difficult that promise would be to fulfill. But I also had never envisioned saying, till death do us part, and in sickness and in health. I never really thought that was going to happen for us, especially not at 34 and 44, but I was with him till the end. And then it was now on me to provide a life for his child by myself that was magical. And so, I got back, I had to tell a 4-year-old her dad had passed away. It was the worst moment of my life. Saying goodbye to my best friend was something I never thought I, could handle, but saying to my daughter that her best friend was dead was incomprehensible. I couldn't do it. It was so hard. But I was very honest with her, and she had this little wail of begging for her dad that I think I heard for probably five months. In the middle of the night, she'd scream out and beg for her dad. But together, she and I really have tried to grow to be these super women, and I think for a 4-year-old to experience, she witnessed his death, and then she watched that trauma, and then she had to fight for her own health with me, so we did therapy and counseling and small groups and art projects and music projects and all kinds of things to try to get our brains and minds and bodies healthy after that trauma. Meanwhile, I had been, in this condo by myself at night. When Reagan would go to sleep, I'd be downstairs by myself. And, normally Buddy and I would be sitting there watching The Bachelor or Survivor or something, but now it was just quiet. And it was heartbreaking. Every time I, sat down there in the quiet, it was all I could think about was 10 feet away from me, he had died. And a friend told me, Ashley, you've got to give yourself something to take your mind off of this. You need to start writing. And I've always written research as a scholar, but he said, no, not that. You write about really heavy things. Don't write about murder and sexual assault right now. Write about your daughter. And he had seen this little picture of my daughter dancing with a skeleton. Her best friend is a posable skeleton named Fresno. And he said, that is the weirdest, most beautiful picture because she should be scared of a skeleton, right? And there's so many things in our lives that we should be scared of because we're told they're scary. But she loved it. And for her, Fresno is beautiful and kind and those types of things. So I said, you're right. That is really cool. So I started writing a children's book, which is now the children's book that I just released. But it saved me by having a creative outlet. And then I started writing a teen ghost novel and, working on some other outlets, writing, a little bit about my own life down on paper. And eventually I had to go back to work. And for me, again, I focus on really heavy topics. So there was a battle of making sure my own mental health was in check while I'm talking about these really heavy, emotional, traumatic events that happened to others. And I struggled a lot because my best friend had been there with me. Buddy had been there with me from the time I got my PhD on. And so here I am, 9 years out, stepping back into the classroom for the first time without best friend, as part of that journey with me. And, but I did have a promise we had made to each other. We had moved to pursue this other job for me. And that job actually came open right when I had returned from bereavement leave. And little did I know I'd actually be excluded from the search later that year for that position. So I was not considered for this position that we had moved for. Some of my colleagues were upset with me about, God knows what. And, but in that moment, again, I lost my identity. Like, as I told you earlier, when we're defined by our jobs, when things don't go the way we planned, my world shattered again. So motherhood had been repositioned because of the miscarriages. Wife had been taken away from me because of my husband's death. And now, I'm a single mom, which is not what I started out as. And now this professional title that I've always had and strived for again was gone. And I grieved that just like I had grieved Buddy's death. And I had this thought of like, what did I do? And what could I have done differently? And what if I was better? Or why am I not worthy or valuable enough? And finally, my same friend that told me to write said, Ashley, you're the one who gets to define who you are and what your life is. So yes, they have taken a career opportunity away from you. And yes, they have written a narrative about you that is not accurate, but that's their view of you. What's your view of you? And so many of us that love you and rally around you, including some of my current colleagues that are like family to me, they don't define me in a negative light. They see my worth and value. But for some reason, those few strong voices of the ones who are, hurtful in your life speak so loudly. So when he told me that, it really made me step back and say, yeah, you're right. I get to tell the world who I am and what I am. And I made that promise to Buddy to create a magical life for Reagan. And this is not that magical life, because I'm crying constantly and I'm sick constantly because of work. And in my head, I said, that's not fair to me, but it's also not fair to my daughter. And it's not a way to honor the promise I made to Buddy when I kissed him goodbye. And so I marched down to the courthouse and I opened up a small business. And I called it Ray of Sunshine after my daughter Reagan. And with that, I said, look, I'm going to put her name in the title of my business. That business is going to publish and sell My Friend Fresno, the girl who dances with skeletons, My Friend Fresno, our first book in the series of books about Fresno. And I'll also use that business to sell the ancillary products like stuffed animals and puzzles and coloring books and those kinds of things that go with Fresno. And in that, I can take the message that just because we're different doesn't mean we're scary or doesn't mean we're not lovable or those types of things. Because in our society, we have all of these conflicts between race and religion and disabilities and those types of things. And the reality is that if we opened our eyes and understood that differences are actually beautiful and that they make us special, and that together we create such a stronger world when we accept and embrace and celebrate people who are different and include them in our circle and in our life. That's what Fresno's about. It's this little skeleton who should be scary to this little girl, but she takes time to know him and to understand who he is. And, at the end of it, she says, if people got to know him, everyone would want Fresno for a friend. He's easy to love. All of us are human and easy to love. And, just because we're not the same doesn't mean that we're not valuable. And doesn't mean that our value only comes from one place. So in that, I want to take that message to elementary school children here in the States and talk to them about bullying and loving themselves and finding self-worth and the worth and value in others who may not look or act just like them. And to me, I'm like, that's what I signed up to do, to make my daughter's life magical. And now she tells people, I'm a children's book character. She gets to be a children's book character in a story about love and acceptance. And mainly that energy comes from that little girl. Reagan's 6 now. At 4 years old, she watched her father die in front of her in a pretty traumatic manner. It was scary, the manner that he died in. And it scared me at 34. It was something that the vision and sounds and things like that were haunting. And that baby has not only survived that, but she's thrived after his death. And it's because she was so loved by him. It's because Buddy believed in me so much to be the mother Reagan needed. And, I was left and I had to pick up the pieces and show her what it means to be a strong woman and a woman who's vulnerable, right? I cry in front of her all the time. I try to keep, high level emotions away from her, but I definitely cry. I tell her I miss him. I talk to her and as if she is just a little adult, that I have feelings too, so that she can then say, oh, mom's a safe place and I can grieve and talk to mom and not feel ashamed that I have these feelings. And so what inspires me is that I have had true love that forever will be something that I'm grateful for. That love has shown me, through my relationship with Buddy, it showed me what my value was. I remember a couple of months ago, I was so upset about work and I thought Buddy would never let me dwell on this. He would say, girl, we're changing directions. You're not going to be treated like that, or your value is so much, more than this. So I was able to use messages that he taught me as my partner, even after his death. And so the promise I made to him, the gift that he gave me of my daughter, and these lessons that I learned by being his partner, I know hold this future that will allow me to be loved again. I mean, who can say they've been loved once truly, but much less twice, been truly deeply loved? I know that that's in my future. Because Buddy had talked to me about that, and he had said, if I die, I want you to be loved, and I want my daughter to be loved fearlessly by someone. And so that is in my future. My daughter having a life worth living and a life full of experience and culture and exposure to people is something that I strive for. Having her see a mother who's healthy and brave is something I hope she sees in me. And yeah, that's my inspiration. My little girl who has survived horrific things, she deserves a beautiful life. And by giving her a beautiful life, my goal is to make sure that mine is happy and healthy and full of beauty as well.
Ooh, wow. I was really tearing up. That
Oh,
was really powerful stuff. I mean,
thank you.
I couldn't follow up after that now.
No, I mean, it's my story.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
I'm blessed in many ways. As tragic as turns in my life have been, to say that I had those things to lose is kind of what life's all about. If I hadn't been loved so deeply, I wouldn't have lost so deeply. And if I hadn't succeeded in so many ways, I wouldn't feel the failures. So, or the I wouldn't even say they're failures, but the roadblocks wouldn't be so hurtful. And so it's like, well, you got to keep in mind the pain we experience after disappointment and trauma and things like that is often a cost of the beauty that we had in our lives. And so it's about dealing with that and then saying, okay, now how do I move forward and recreate beautiful moments?
interesting. Um, the next part of it was we were going to get into motivation and philosophy, but since you've already wrapped up that, uh, that was really powerful. Um,
Thank you.
I felt like I was there with your storytelling, and I was really uh, I'm lost for words, to be honest.
Oh, thank you, Rajiv. Thank you for letting me share it with your listeners.
Thank you so much for that. I mean, that is powerful to me, and yeah. Uh, before we get into my favorite topic, which is of course art talk and entrepreneurship talk segment, we're just gonna have a short break. This episode is sponsored by Dulce House, the online shop for your guilty pleasure. Use the promo code PIPE to buy chocolate chip cookies, Oreo cheesecake cookies, and other baking goodies. The promo code is PIPE. Go to the link in the description to find out more.
Catch the Pizarra Tales weekly as we tackle issues about education and share experiences about teaching. Hosted by James Australia, available on your favorite podcast platforms.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back. It was a powerful, powerful first half. I'm my guest, Dr. Ashley Wellman, with amazing story. I had to recollect myself before continuing this part. We're gonna get into something fun. I mean, we're gonna get into art talk first. We're gonna have a little bit of conversation about art talk. You mentioned that your child loves skeletons, and she's part of an illustration. Uh, what was going through your head when you when you came up with the thing? How did the storytelling and the narrative, how did it all fall into play?
Well, it was pretty easy because I am not the artist. I'm more the creative intellect of the writing part. I'll tell you about my artist in a second. But for me, it was Reagan was living this life with a best friend who's a skeleton. So remember, I'm a criminologist and I specialize in homicides. So I had bought this little 3-foot posable skeleton to go in my office. And, he was just going to be a decoration in my office. And when my little girl was 2, Reagan said, you cannot take him to your office. This is my best friend. And she named
Oh,
him Fresno. And I don't know where the name came from, but she was very excited and she was very, very serious about the fact that I could not take him because this was her friend. And so they started doing things like taking a nap together and going
Oh.
on car rides together. And, when she got a little electric car, Fresno was her passenger. And so it was just funny and quirky. And so in those dark times, my friend had seen the picture of her dancing with Fresno and had told me, write a children's book about that. And so Reagan really became my collaborator on the writing part, because I would ask her, like, what do you like about Fresno? Or what is special about Fresno? Or what could you guys do together? What do you play together? And those answers kind of got incorporated into the story. And then I got teamed up with a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant illustrator. His name is Zach Kincaid. His uncle is Thomas Kincaid, who is the painter of light, a very well-known artist. But Zach is just this genius in his own manner, in his own way. And when I got teamed up with him, I said, here's the story, here's the picture that inspired it. How do you see Fresno? And I remember just the first picture he ever sent me, I couldn't stop smiling, because he had taken a skeleton, which again should be something scary,
Hmm.
and made him so lovable and so gentle and so sweet. And Fresno's almost this meek character compared to Reagan, because Reagan's the one that kind of teaches him to love himself, and that he's valuable and worthy, even though other people might tease him or say that he's not. And so, yeah, it was born out of reality, although a very strange reality. And it's just part of kind of our fun, wacky, personalities and sense of humor and imagination.
But I like how it tied into the how art. This is my first experience of connecting art with relationships.
Mm-hmm.
It is funny how I like to connect this to a story of mine, as mentioned in my previous season, where I was in India, my last years, where my only longest relationship in life was, of course, my relationship with comics. But that was that one thing I'm grateful for that experience is, of course, the fact that it kept me alive. It kept me
Yeah.
going, and it kept me saying. And of course, something about friction brings, although in reality it's to a person it's considered fake, in a reality sense of thinking about it. But when you are getting into, but when you mention your daughter uh, had this special relationship with this character, it feels like somewhat fiction has this interesting connection to that makes things that are not real reality. I don't know if you understood
Yeah.
what I said. It's
Yeah, no, I
really
absolutely
fascinating.
understand. Yeah,
um,
and she's used that relationship to be symbolic to so many other things. Like, one of the little girls in one of our support groups was she was missing some of her limbs. She was born with a condition where her arms and legs did not form. And Reagan loved this little girl, and she made sure everyone knew that she was just a special, beautiful little girl, and Reagan just loved her because it was that same love she had for Fresno, of like, people would tease her, like they'd kind of laugh and snicker. We'd be in the airport or something like that, and she'd be carrying Fresno around, and they'd kind of laugh at Fresno. But Reagan at first thought they were laughing at her. And it took a lot of talks of saying, like, first of all, if they were laughing at you, that's your friend, who cares?
mm,
And then she kind of took on that mentality of saying, like, don't be mean to people just because you don't understand it or you don't know or it's different. And so it's neat because that relationship has spawned so many beautiful qualities about her personality as well.
Interesting. Wow. That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. Um, yeah. I mean, relationships. One thing in art is it's for an artist, coming from an artist also is it, it's not more something about art. I'm gonna get deep into how perceive art. Art is something about inside something inside of you that you
Mm,
transcribe into the world, and and the various mediums. It could be baking, it could be storytelling, writing. It's really fascinating. But the only misconception there is it's not really it's not just an internal thing, it's also the external factors that really
yeah.
create that dynamic. And I like the heart and soul of how your daughter perceives fiction, protecting a fictional character and making it real. And I'm looking forward to see what mediums this illustrated story of yours could lead. And I'm actually blown away by the fact that it connected. One thing is that now we're living in a crazy time, and I'm sure you agree with me. Like, a lot of people are going bonkers with the
Yeah.
isolation and, of course, being quarantined at home. And I hope this episode would talk to them and say that you need to start something, be creative, and of
Yes.
course sing. Find your medium. Be it may
Yes.
writing and writing, illustration, or even podcasting.
I
And
don't think there's ever been a time, I don't think there's ever been a time in our history where we were forced to slow down and say no, and like we've had all of this time on our hands. And I
uh,
think it can be maddening and kind of deafening in how isolated and lonely it is.
mm,
But it's also, for the first time in my life, I mean, here, especially in the States, everything's go, 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 go. It's
mm,
you sign up for too many things and you say yes to everything. And this was the first, I mean, I've been at home alone since probably 6 months, going on 6 months.
mm,
And it's been the most difficult and healing experience of my life, because the noise and the things that distract us, even from the pain, or from trauma, or from, the hardships, or our own voices in our heads, those aren't here right now. The distractions are gone. And so for me, I'm so thankful for my writing. And in those dark times, it was before the pandemic, but in those dark times after Buddy's death, writing was my magic. And I would, especially when I was writing my teen ghost book with my colleague, with my friend, I would run in his office and say, I'm seeing color that I've never seen. Like, the whole world felt colorful and bright. And there was something about my mental health that just shifted. And I was like, don't think I'm crazy, but I can literally see colors all around me, when I was writing and in the zone of creating a world that let me kind of escape mine for a moment and kind of use that energy and my emotions that were so raw. It made the story beautiful, in my writing, stronger. And so I'd encourage people to say, maybe I've never tried it before, or maybe it's been 20 years since I picked up a pen and paper or coloring, instrument or whatever. But art is so healing. It's so therapeutic and it's so expressive. So even if it was just for your own consumption and beauty in your home, create something. It just takes everything and puts it into a production that's, very valuable.
that's powerful. We're gonna transition into another segment, which is entrepreneurship talk. You mentioned earlier that you are an entrepreneur, and the first question normally is, what is uh, what is the most scariest thing? What is the scariest pivotal point that made you decide, okay, I want to try this entrepreneurship thing? Because a lot of the young entrepreneurs are being exposed to the idea of, the they've been bombarded with the fake identity of,
Mm-hmm.
fast cars and mansions and all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff once they get into entrepreneurship. And I guess that's the something about marketing is
Yeah.
selling them. And but before that, there are a lot of genuine people who decide, okay, um I want to do entrepreneurship because I want to sing. And of course, some people, they have the trauma, or they have a breakup with their girlfriend or something,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or something that gives them a reality check. I mean, what was your pivotal point when you decided, okay, I want to do something, I want to be an entrepreneur, and I want to do what I do?
I think it's when everything that I had held so dearly and so defining as who I was as a human being. So to me, being a scholar and being Dr. Ashley Wellman as a successful tenured faculty member, like, I had made it to where everyone says, like, oh, you've hit the peak of your career.
Mm,
I had given that up to pursue a new career path, that would have led me back to that point, in a different location. And when that roadblock came up where someone else wrote my story for me and took away everything that defined me, I had already lost, like I said, I lost the holistic definition of motherhood with miscarriages. I lost the role of wife with the death of Buddy. And then I've said, okay, that's okay. That's okay. I'm a scholar. I'm a professor. I'm going to, be a tenure track professor and get tenure again. I had that path defined, and that's the only thing I thought I could control. And then that also got taken away from me. And in that moment, it was that forced question of, are you going to let them define who you are and believe them? Or are you going to define who you are and show the world the truth and what you really are and what you're really valuable, what your value is? And I said, well, that's a tough question. And then I said, like, I'm going to have to trust and believe in myself in a way I've never done before. And I believe in this magical world that was coming out of Fresno. And I said, you know what? Risk it. And I think the hardest part is trusting yourself, because there are, in any given day, any entrepreneur that's especially starting out and isn't successful yet, I'm risking our financial, comfort, and I'm risking my entire savings account. I'm doing, this and that because I believe in it so much. And so there's moments when, you write a check and you go, oh my God, is this going to work? Am I going to be successful? And I have to remember, there's the definition of success is I'm trying my best, and I'm dreaming, and I'm trying, and I'm doing everything that I can to the best of my ability to make this work. And I have to trust and believe in it, or else it won't work. No one else is going to believe in it the way I believe in it. And so I'm willing to put the, elbow grease in and do the dirty work, but it doesn't stop. As an entrepreneur, like you said, like there's this dream of, oh my God, I'm going to be financially independent and have these nice cars and blah, blah, blah. Mine is seriously trying to reclaim who I am as a human being. And so it may never come with the fast car, and it may never come with, the big dollar signs, but because I'm driven by this desire to show my daughter who I am and what, resilience looks like, and I want to help others through the book and through the story and the message of Fresno, I'm praying that genuine, true endeavor is what kind of keeps me grounded and working every day. And in the moments that I say, like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this, it's being resourceful and saying, you got to believe in yourself. And who do I know who knows this better than me? And reaching out to friends and family and, professionals who know what you're doing, and ask them to give you the tips and tricks of the trade, because you don't have to do it all by yourself, but you got to believe in yourself more than anyone else believes in you. So that's kind of the track I'm on.
I've noticed one interesting thing about your personality and how you mention your daughter. It's really interesting that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I don't know if I got the words right, but it's
Yeah, that's right. That's
interesting.
exactly right.
You fight for, even though the toughest of the toughest breaks you, but you still have that, that power of looking at it, turning a positive into a negative into a positive, and how you make it in a creative way and express it is really an interesting part of your narrative and your storytelling, and of course your motivation, and how it all connects is very, very, very fascinating.
Thank you. I think the best testament to who I am at the end of my life is if someone says Reagan's an incredible woman and she's very much like you, that would be just the ultimate, I've done my job,
Uh,
I've done my job. I'm not perfect, but I love hard and I fight hard, and I'm trying to raise a little girl to do the same. So thank you for saying that.
that's a powerful stuff. I mean, with all the things that you've covered from the earlier conversation, and of course the art talk, this conversation is like a huge umbrella. That's the way the way I've heard the stories and how it all connects. It's very fascinating. Speaking of connects, if someone wants to connect with you via social media, how do they find you, or how do they find your book?
Yeah. So the most exciting thing to follow is the Adventures of Fresno and Reagan. And they can do that on any of the social media platforms. So Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, they're all going to be at My Friend Fresno. And then the book and activities and prompts for parents to ask their children, and in worksheets. Really fun things can be found on our website, including our Bone Boutique, the shop, where you can find the book and other goodies. That's going to be at www.myfriendfresno.com.
Awesome. With that in mind, this has been an education. I have a feeling I got a PhD in something else aside from aside from criminology. I mean, this is an amazing conversation, and uh, honestly, this is one of the most my favorite conversation so far. And
Thank you.
thank you so much, Doctor. I'm hoping to see you in hear from you in a further collaboration again. And
Absolutely. And I hope your listeners walk away saying you can survive anything, and when you fight you can thrive after it. So I hope that my story just inspired one person to create and to fight for the next morning that comes.
and thank you again. Thank you for coming to my show. Thank you for being featured on my show.
Thank you, Rajiv.
Okay. Uh, with that in mind, folks, I will see you in the next episode.